What a crowd! I tell you what, our former, I guess boss is the right word, owner, money man, Ken Bates would have been very proud of that stadium in Papua New Guinea with those fences all the way around.
People stood behind the.
That was his thing.
Was it 19,000 people live in Goroka and 7 turned up to the game?
He would have, if they were only electrified, he would have loved them.
Well, he would have been able to electrify.
Yeah,
Good old days.
Yeah, remember the good old days, people. How do, says Michael. How are you? How are you, Michael? Thanks for joining us on this.
We're all good.
Historic. I believe this is now actually officially the 100th podcast.
Is it? Had a baked cake.
I say that, but someone told me the other week our numbers were wrong. So,
okay. Well, that wouldn't be the first time. That's why we do rugby league.
Yeah.
Numbers are wrong.
There is no money in rugby league, as we have to point out as well.
This chair isn't vacant, as in it's Kay Burley and
James Cleverly. The aptly. What's that word for people who are aptly named for their jobs?
It's not onomatopoeic. That's names that sound like their jobs. Anyway, apposite.
We'll start the programme with that. People will.
But yes, this isn't a James Cleverly chair. Our guest is on his way straight from the Southern Hemisphere.
Yes.
Well, not quite. It's been
Sheffield.
Yeah, been here a couple of days. Oh, it could be flooded.
I'm worried seeing those pictures at Meadowhall and people still around Doncaster.
Why did they make the people who had to stay at Meadowhall pay for their own pyjamas?
Well, I was thinking that if I was running Primark, knowing that everyone knows that the clothing Primark, not sure, well, everyone knows the same, but everyone knows how, I don't want to say the Bradford Bulls already. But you think they'd get good publicity by just giving away the pyjamas?
You would have thought.
You wouldn't have thought they'd be losing
But
much
all
money.
the people who were Vox Pops would have said, isn't it great for Primark that they've given us our flannelette 90s?
I hate Vox Pops. And especially for two reasons. One, to the people out there who don't know, when you're a young reporter in the world of journalism, broadcasting, you have to do them. People say, go and do some Vox Pops. Why? It's not the people. The nominative determinism, thank you, Michael. There's got
John Michael's listening.
in the Great Gossip, just to go off on a tangent, the Great Gossip weekly email called Pot Bitch, they usually come up with people with names that are completely suited to their jobs, which are more amusing than that. Oh, it's Facebook broken already.
Some things lie, because it's just come.
Yeah, well, I haven't. Andrew says top show. This is the best 2 minutes we've ever done.
Tam O'Shanter on the table, which is our sop to Great Britain being representative of all 4 nations.
That's Lachlan Coote. Lachlan Coote's hat has appeared. Because there's no one Welsh. Can't find anyone Welsh.
But Mr. Davidson's on his way, so shall we talk about non-international matters before he arrives?
The fixtures are out.
Well, we hinted at it last
excited.
Monday, didn't we, that there'd be only one game at Easter.
We did.
Double-header to kick off the season with Sonny Bill's potential
Yes,
debut.
Sonny Bill Williams, who for months we've been told was coming to Toronto, and who'd have thought it? There he is, and everyone's unhappy because he's
good.
Yeah,
he might
it's
make
not
Toronto.
at their club.
I suspect that it is a game changer.
Well, he's famous, isn't he? And he's a person who people in the world of sport who don't care about rugby, and when I say rugby, I mean either code, because it's not as if in Toronto people are queuing up to go watch any code of rugby, but they've heard of him.
Yes.
He's
But
a
not only
famous
that,
person.
but checking the newspapers for coverage, it's been in the Hong Kong Gazette and the Bogota Times and you name it. It's been covered worldwide. It's made a huge impact. I think he will make a huge impact on the side as well, because he is still at the peak of his game. He's just signed from the All Blacks in the World Cup, so he's not coming as soiled goods in any way. I think the other thing about him is he's a devout Muslim, which opens up a whole new market again for for rugby league that it currently doesn't cater to. I can't see a downside to Sonnybill. They're unveiling him on Thursday at Arsenal, which again is fantastic. Well, you know, how many press conferences do we normally have? It's
in Manchester.
Yeah.
It's at Old Trafford.
Yeah. So that's good. The fixtures were finally announced for England and Australia.
After, of course, the announcement of the England fan club. It's called the Wall of White, which is a crap name.
£5.
And I did. People can't say, "Oh, you say it's crap," but I did vote in that poll. I can't remember what I voted for, but I didn't vote for Wall of White, which I'm sorry, does have. It sounds like some kind of far right organisation, but like a rubbish one.
It sounds like something Donald Trump wants to bring in.
Yeah. So but you get 20. You get a badge. And you get a scarf.
You get 5% off your tickets. I think.
£5 off a ticket. Yeah.
£5 off.
So that's good.
But we're going to Tottenham.
Spurs are on the way to Tottenham.
See, that's good though,
Tottenham's
isn't it?
Gonna do anything.
Supposedly the most state-of-the-art stadium in the country.
Well,
in the capital of England, and we're going there.
Just to dispel any rumours, our colleague Mark Wilson has been there to do the football on the old Talk Sport and said it's amazing. So
It's
great for the press.
Goes from there to Harrogate.
So it's great for the press. So yeah, it looks like it will be. It's just a shame it's not the first test, because that would make more sense. Because
well, you can't lose with the first test, can you? No matter what. I mean, I suspect that either Tottenham are at home, or, as you said, there might be an NFL fixture.
The NFL might bring in more money. I don't know. I'm not 100% on that.
But there will be a very good reason why. Clearly, it can't be the first test.
But even if it's the third and Australia have won the first two, it's a chance to go to, and I read this, an iconic stadium.
Well,
we don't get that. We won't have the opportunity in 2021 to go to an iconic stadium.
How long do you have to be open to be iconic?
Well, a week apparently.
Right. Okay.
But it is iconic. But apparently it is really.
Yes, it's got every modern facility you could want in a high prestigious sporting
so I'm looking forward to it. If I'm
looking forward
or not, I don't know what we'll be doing at that point, but well, the credits anyone, as we know. So I'm looking forward to going to Spurs and Bolton and Ellen Road, because everyone loves Ellen Road, so that'd be good.
We've got such a good record there against the Aussies as well.
Yeah. Well, at least at Spurs we've never lost there. So that's we're unbeaten.
Is Bolton slightly underwhelming?
It's an interesting thing, and I guess we'll talk about this when we talk about Great Britain and England and what we are called. I guess there's a wider point. We're having a national conversation about our identity, aren't we? But the Crowns haven't always been great for Great Britain, like England. So,
I think
is it a lack of ambition or a real?
Or is it the best venue we can get in the Northwest?
Possibly so.
That we've got a chance of filling.
Slightly bigger than Wigan, isn't it? People didn't like Anfield.
No.
From the internationals, all the magic, so we haven't gone there.
The Etihad.
Yeah, the Etihad. I don't know why we haven't gone back to the Etihad.
Because that would sit nicely with Old Trafford for the grand final. Etihad for an international game.
So just see what people are going on.
Magic is in Newcastle.
Yes.
Which we knew.
Yes.
But that now fits into the full scheme of the fixtures, which is excellent.
Hello to all the people listening. Hello to Matt, who's not in New Zealand. It's because he won the cricket, isn't he, Matt? Because you're not there.
Matt's back.
Hello to...
Karen's got a burnt foot.
Yeah. Hello to the people who are not enjoying the show anymore.
Really?
You know what to do.
Well, I think they should tell us about it.
Matt Pryor signing for Leeds, well, the cricketer. He's good. Remember him, says Robert. He's got a cycling team now, it's a bit of a move. Cruz Leeming's off to Leeds apparently. He's signing everyone for the Leeds. Don't be breaking that salary cap again though.
Well, that's it. Which they were duly fined.
Mary says, is the media giving Sonny Bill Williams the Man of Steel already? Yes.
I think he's... What was he, 20 to 1 did you say is the early price for Man of Steel?
Apparently, yeah, I've been told by somebody else, yeah, 20 to 1.
I don't think he'll play every game at the age of 34. It's a long, gruelling, arduous campaign, but I still think they've signed somebody who is almost at the peak of his power.
He's someone people have heard of.
He has. And according to people at Toronto who have pulled off this coup, and I think it is, the phone has never stopped ringing since.
There you go.
And there are people that we probably wouldn't believe who are interested in playing rugby league on the back of the fact that if you can poach somebody of that calibre, we might be interested in playing your sport.
It is almost, and it's scale everything down. The Matt says, is the camera crap or is it your Wi-Fi? Probably a combination of both. Looks okay on our thing. Unless you're watching on Facebook, then it is rubbish. But I don't know how to fix my camera. It is almost like David Beckham, but scroll down. Because people have heard of him who haven't necessarily heard of or know much about rugby or via the flavour. But as you said, he was playing for the All Blacks, which is a worldwide recognised brand.
The other thing is, it does raise a debate about the salary cap per se, and not what he's being paid, because he's being paid what his market value is. And that might seem like an extortionate amount of money in rugby league terms, but that is his market value. But if you're Simon Moran, and you're sat there already got your two marquee signings with Blake Austin and Gareth Widdop, and you see one of your rivals has signed a player that arguably is higher profile than both of those, do you want to immediately go into the market? Should you be allowed to go into the market? If you could get the next big thing?
50 grand a week. I was looking, because you can use the inflation calculator online. Wally Lewis, when he came over to play for Wakefield in '84, which when you think about everything going on in 1984 in Wakefield, a player getting £1,000 a week is ridiculous. Got some breaking news coming up, by the way.
Does it involve Wally Lewis?
No, sadly not. If you're taking into account for inflation, apparently £1,000 in 1984 is about £3,000 today, which doesn't sound that impressive now when you think about it. So Sonny Bill Williams is on a lot of money, but
he's at the top of his profession.
It is what it is.
And when you think how many shirts that will be sold with his name on the back, when you think how many commercial endorsements he'll either bring in or...
And I'm sure he will get a cut of those shirts as well, because he's not stupid.
But also, all of the people that have said what the Toronto bring in terms of away fans, I can see a lot of away fans going to watch Toronto who don't support Toronto to see Sonny Bill Williams.
Neutral people.
Yeah. Rugby union fans.
There was a time...
General sporting fans.
Where I use ice hockey as an example because it's one I can attest to. When there was an ice hockey strike, the NHL was on strike, and no doubt Sandy will be able to tell when it was, 94, 95, because that would tally with when I was a regular goer to matches. Never been a regular goer.
I had you down as a goer.
And the Cardiff Devils, who were one of the top teams at the time, tried to sign Glenn Anderson, who was one of Wayne Gretzky's teammates at Edmonton. This was towards the end of his career, but they weren't playing ice hockey, they were on strikes, and they tried to sign him. But they couldn't get him to play a regular season game. I think they played in a couple of friendlies or something. Theo Fleury...
What, bit like Wendell Sailor?
Yeah. What went wrong for Wendell? It was down the road.
Yeah.
Theo Fleury, when he went to Belfast Giants, was a famous name in ice hockey. But not of the worldwide resonance of Sonny Bill Williams, who, lest we forget, made his name in our code in the first place. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens.
Well, I think the season doubleheader was exciting enough anyway, but if he does make his debut in that game against Castleford, I can see Headingley being sold out on the first weekend of the season. Now, I'm Robert Elston, and I slightly changed my tune a little bit and say I'm not sure I want Toronto in it. Oh, by the way, if they've signed Sonny Bill Williams, could everybody sign someone as big as that? I just think that could be a perfect start to the Super League weekend. If we can get a sellout double-header game, fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Let's kick on and make the most of it.
People come up with other names for the Wall of White. Yeah, they're the obvious ones, but that's good. Well done, Phil.
Does it rhyme with White?
Well, Phil's name is Phil White, so I'm sure Phil would have heard that. I mean, my surname, I've heard similar over the years. Why have we gone to Arsenal, says Anthony. Spurs will be great, but surely we should have had a dummy run at the Emirates a year before the World Cup. I think they want to save it for the World Cup.
Yeah, I think they want it to be an absolutely unique occasion. It's a semi-final of the World Cup, which England, according to seeding, should be playing in. So I think you don't need to worry too much about selling that out, and to have a second venue in North London doesn't do us any harm. And well, actually a third, because we've got Wembley as well.
Yeah, I think what we learned from going to the Olympic Stadium for the Tri-Nations or Four Nations is terrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
As an atmosphere, I said it at the time, I say it again now, went there for the Paralympics, the atmosphere was great. Watching England and Australia there, not quite as
Well,
much.
it's part of a shopping centre.
It is.
And there was nothing likeable about the ground, really. And going back to our good friend Mr. Kellner, who we mentioned at the top of the show, he's been an arch critic of the lack of atmosphere at West Ham's new abode as opposed to Upton Park. So
The Austrian strike was 1995. There you go. Thanks, Sandy. I knew you'd remember it was. That's in the days when you used to get really good, kind of, not they weren't good enough to play in America, but they came over here to play and you thought, oh, it's a good place.
So you've hinted at breaking news.
Yeah, it's sad breaking news because it comes out of the West Wales Raiders, who, as we know, won a game last year. And sadly, their director of rugby, Kim Williams, has left. So they're looking for a new one.
Right.
So
wasn't he an Aussie?
yes, if you want the job, they're looking for one. They've got anyone interested should complete the document in this link, and there's like a thing to
Are you going to fill in?
Well, no, because it does say should ideally hold a qualification, but as we've seen in this sport, you don't necessarily need a qualification to become, say, director of rugby at the Rugby Football League. So, I could apply.
Nice.
But
That was nice. Nicely done.
The thing, I've been doing this since 2002.
So let's talk about England's women.
They beat Papua New Guinea.
As Mr. Davidson wouldn't have seen them play.
Well, I've seen the highlights.
Great cultural tour for them. All the footage that's come back of them being welcome to the country, and the local population of Goroka, where they've been in the Highlands, have made them feel so welcome. But they came up with the goods as well. Good performance in a very hostile environment against the Orchids. Very physical Orchids side, we were told. Emily Rudge set a new record for
4 tries in the game.
Woman in an international. That's what you want your captain to do.
Captain's knock, isn't it? They would have got 3 out of 10. For their, surely the match should be out of 13 anyway. Should start doing that next year. Both papers, by the way, have got you cut out and keep things with all the pictures.
Yes, put it on your wall.
I did that video last week, just take it on YouTube, do it on there. People didn't like the music, complained about the music, country and western music. I thought it fit, you know why I chose that music? It fit with the length of the video. Yes, Captain Marvel's Fantastic Four, which I think is a combination of all of the Marvel universe there. 24, I've got the result the wrong way around there in the paper.
Oh.
I don't know if Paul's watching, he was very critical of the BBC this morning for getting the wrong pictures of Boris Johnson. I mean, how would you know it wasn't Boris Johnson? But he got the score the wrong way around. He's off for the week. We'll blame somebody else. So we won, which is great. There's loads of people. There's those typical pictures of like non-league football during the FA Cup. People standing on trees and stuff. Or at Bellevue standing on the roofs outside to watch the match. Goroka probably up there with the Mobile Rocket these days. But as you say, 24-10. He looked amazing. He looked amazing.
I think the other important thing is the reaction that's come back of the women that played in the game has all been resoundingly positive. They've all had an absolutely fantastic time. They've benefited and grown as a group, but just to be in that environment, it was just something from Casey Gentles came in yesterday or the day before, saying never ever experienced anything like this before. This is what we want. We want our top athletes to be in a position where they're getting life experiences from the sport that means they'll stick with the sport.
I think it was Rachel Thompson who was one of the try scorers who realised her heritage number is 69, so she was quite excited about that. Don't know why. On the Insta, Women's Rugby League Instagram, it's the best thing on the internet because they haven't been trained how to do things in the way that the men are just dull and promote stuff. It had this epiphany during the last World Cup here, which I shouldn't have had before that point. The Cook Islands, Tonga, Papua New Guinea, these are all our people.
Yeah.
We are all the same. We're all the same rugby league people, and that's why we need to not be so insular in the way we look at the world. In many ways, but when you see those 7,000 people stood around,
who live for the sport,
stood around the pitch, and I've never been to Papua New Guinea. I'm never going to go there because it's too far away.
you can't get a bus.
No, Ballyclonarty is not too far away, so I could take over at West Wales. You just look there and think, these are the same as us. They are exactly the same as us. They're a million miles away. They don't have the same technology or advantages we have in life. But down at the bottom of it, they're rugby league people.
Well, we told the story the other week of the Cameroon team that played in the Middle East Africa Championship, who couldn't afford anything other than a bus to get to the tournament in Lagos. It took them 4 days to get there. They arrived 2 hours before their first game. They had a party after the second game to send them off because the other nations thought what they'd done was fantastic. They got stopped at the border on the way back, threatened with arrest and robbery, and they eventually got home 4 days after they'd set off on the return journey. And they are just as passionate about rugby league as we are. They really care, and we need to embrace all that.
Mary says, shame the men didn't match up to the ladies' success. We'll talk about them in a minute.
Yes, when our tub of lard arrives.
So we will talk about the men, because we've got plenty to say about them. Pete says, what do you think about Fem's recruitment for 2020? Brett Ferris is very exciting signing, isn't it? And for whatever reason, I'm a big Dale Ferguson fan for his time as a junior at Wakefield, and probably been unlucky with injuries, hasn't he?
And he was brilliant for Scotland as well in their qualifications for the World Cup, captain them to 2021. Congratulations to them and Ireland.
Yes.
And Italy and Greece. We've now got 2 new nations, Jamaica and Greece.
For whatever reason, and it's probably unfair to say Brett Ferris and Leeds hasn't worked out, because Leeds hasn't worked out in the past couple of years.
Yeah, and Brett Ferris has been injured for more time than he's been on the field. He's just had a knee clear out and hopes that that's going to give him a new lease of life. What people forget when Leeds signed him was he was then a current England international. So the fact that it hasn't worked out doesn't mean he wasn't the pedigree that they should have been signed.
I think the Championship is a fascinating competition next year, isn't it? Because we saw how close Featherstone got this year to promotion to Super League, which would have changed a lot of things. I don't think Fev were going to sign Sonny Bill Williams.
There isn't a standout team in the same way that there was a Toronto this year.
Toulouse have obviously made some good signings, haven't they?
Well, they've lost a couple of players as well, but they're beatable. Whereas Toronto last year, you didn't really think they were. So yeah, I think there'll be at least half of that division will feel that they can finish in the top 5 with some degree of justification.
It's going to be an interesting competition. How much of it we see televised again is going to be the big question. I'm not sure we'll see any of it on Sky because they each only have it outside of Toronto this year. What's
really interesting at the moment about the fixture announcements is that we're still waiting to hear if Catalan and Toronto games are going to be covered. I think they will. There'll be even if they have to go back cap in hand to BN and not take the offer that they actually want, but perhaps one that is more realistic and on the table. But we need the Catalan and the Toronto games covered.
I think this is the interesting thing, is for years on this programme we have said that the sport perhaps undersells itself at times. We don't know how much the BBC pays for whatever they get, and you assume in these negotiations with beIN or whoever in France that Robert Elson is looking for what he feels is a fair market value for the sport. So it's easy to criticise and say, oh no, but it's also, you've got to say, well, at least they're looking to get more money for the product, which is what we've said for years, that perhaps we don't get enough money.
I think Sky as well would like to show Catalan games. I think it's a good filler on a Saturday afternoon. So I think they'd be keen to find a media partner that's going to make sure that we see there. I think the fans like it because obviously not everybody can go to the south of France, so to see your team play there is an advantage.
It's interesting, obviously, I don't look at many Facebook fan groups, but there's plenty of Wakefield fans who seem excited, planning for trips to Toronto. So yes, not everyone can afford it, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year.
But again, it's
Lee will be up there,
life experiences, isn't it? It's about the going back to the England women in Papua New Guinea, you may only ever go to Toronto once. It might be the first time that your team ever plays there, but it's on the agenda now.
Yeah,
It's a choice. If you,
I'm trying to remember how many emails I got from Lee last week.
I think there were 7 in one day.
As Peter says, they will be up there as well. I'm sure they would be. Pete, will there be any plans to get some new blood on the show next season? I'm sure there will be new people coming in all the time.
Did somebody say
old
plans?
people. Yeah, because everybody plans.
This is Rugby League.
Yeah. Saints have got new kit out. It looks like a Saints kit. That's
It's
exciting.
blue.
The away kit, yeah. What about the rumour? George Ford to Leeds, asked Nick. I'm not saying this is some kind of contrary, I don't want a rugby union person, but obviously I know what his dad looked like. I've no idea what George Ford looks like or how he plays or what he does, so would he be a big signing for Leeds in the same way that Sonny Bill Williams is to Toronto? I would say
no, but he's a current England Rugby Union international, so in this country he would be seen as a big signing. He wouldn't be a global signing the same way as SBW is, but I just don't know where he'd play at Leeds. I don't know what position he would play. But he's exempt from the salary cap for one year.
Yeah.
And his brother's coaching Carnegie.
Oh, there you go then. It's all sorted out. We don't know if Toronto are going to sign any more. Apparently they're signing money through Langley, but they're not.
They're in the market. They are definitely in the market, having spoke to their director of rugby this week for his column in the new Forty20 out on Friday. Yes, he's had 25 phone calls and emails from agents around the world who have said, you'd be surprised, but my player wants to come and play for you. Well, they are seriously interested in a couple of rugby union players.
Good if you're a rugby union agent as well at the minute, because you can bump your figures up on your players as well, because you can say they're going to be signing for Toronto.
There's apart from Valentine Holmes, who they've been linked with, and his return to rugby league from the NFL. Was it somebody Wade? Christian Wade.
So I'm thinking of, would have played in the NFL for a bit?
Yeah, he played for Wasps and had a really good try ratio, and then became a running back in the NFL for a little while. And
he scored in a pre-season game and everyone got overexcited, but he didn't get anywhere near the...
but apparently he is interesting Toronto.
We live in interesting times, and they are partly about Toronto. Elsewhere, trying to work out what's going on. People are talking to themselves, which is always good. Fred S. when the championship fixtures announced, it's next
15th
week. There you go.
Of November.
Oh, that's this week then, isn't it? So that'll be exciting.
But we do think that there'll be one less fixture at Blackpool Bash.
Yes, because it looks like twos aren't coming, are they?
The good news is there'll be a fixture at Blackpool Bash, but not quite as many. Yeah, we don't think Toulouse and London will be playing there.
It is a long 2 days, which I would, as I said, I put in the Super League. I put one of the women's games on, an actual proper one that means something rather than the Yorkshire Lancashire.
The women's game domestically is to be expanded.
It's expanding, yeah, which is an interesting talking point in and of itself. I'm not necessarily sure it's a great idea.
Because on the basis of, do you think it distills the...
yeah.
Well, speaking to one of the current players in the Women's Super League, they think it's great that 50 more women and girls get the chance to play at an elite level.
That's good.
And I think the fixtures are going to be structured in such a way that not everybody will play home and away against each other. I think it'll be engineered that the top teams will play each other on a more regular basis than the bottom two.
Maybe you could have gone to having 2 conferences or whatever.
I don't know why he needs to knock.
Waiting for it. It's not Wayne Bennett. You're not Wayne Bennett.
No, I'm not.
You're Sean Wayne.
Sorry to, you can sack me.
No. We've been, I wouldn't say holding the fort, but we've just been saying
talking rubbish.
Flown straight in from the airport. We haven't told anybody you've been home a few days. But we can now talk about England, Great Britain and the Nines.
Candyland.
But before we get into all that, we've just been talking about SBW.
Yes.
The impact he may have. And we're all for it. We think that there aren't too many global sports people around at the moment that will have the impact that he will. Can you see a negative?
I don't think there's really any negatives. I mean, it's a great signing. It's already probably paid off in terms of advertising and media coverage. I guess how many games he plays per season,
Though, I mean, he's very fit. I mean, he's coming off the back of the Rugby Union World Cup, so it's not like he's been playing for the Waratahs Thirds for a couple of years.
He hasn't played much Super Rugby this year because he's been injured a lot.
But he really looks after himself.
He does. Yeah.
He doesn't.
He's a devout Muslim.
Yeah.
Teetotaler. I think, obviously, he's a rugby league player who's gone to rugby union, went back to rugby league, gone back to rugby union, is now coming back to rugby league.
He's got a
Yeah.
Might
He's having fun with Paul Gallen, isn't he?
Paul Gallen.
Wakefield legend Paul Gallen, yeah.
Has he got a heritage number for that one?
Probably.
So I think it'll take him a little while to get back, instead of having 4 touches a game, having maybe 15.
And you can't shoulder charge anymore.
That's right, yeah. He got in trouble against the Lions in 2017 for a shoulder charge on the head of, I think it was Anthony Watson. So no, I don't think there's any negatives. I mean, I guess the key thing will be trying to maintain this level of interest and exposure for the 2 years, because it's been massive the last week and a half. I mean, I've had a radio station in New Zealand ring me up and, a national paper wanting a piece and
when was the last time that happened?
Probably never.
Probably never.
In terms of, unless it's an international tournament, World Cup or whatever. So
I think the number of games he plays is key, but I think he just brings so much to the club by way of introducing new markets, new audiences, perhaps getting that television deal. If you're an executive of a company and it is Beckham-esque, because that's what it's been sort of compared to, you suddenly think, for what it costs, should we add this to our portfolio?
I don't know if you get a TV deal off one player. I think that might be a bit.
Well, I think it's the fact that they're in
thinking,
Super League and now they've got a player that people recognise.
It definitely
and there
puts
will
them
be
on
at least a couple of others.
Yeah, it definitely puts them on the map, much more than And I'm trying to think of another signing that probably could, even across rugby union. I mean, if it was England, maybe Owen Farrell, but I think because Sonny Bill's kind of got that.
The important thing, they're looking at Valentine Holmes and Christian Wade, who have touched the NFL.
Valentine Holmes wouldn't have anywhere near the sort of. He's a big name in Australia, but he's not a big name.
But I think the fact that they've sort of scratched the New York NFL team.
Yes,
people have sort of heard of him, and so again, you're dealing with someone who the general public might be tempted to come along and see because we've heard a bit about him. But I think you're right to raise the point. It's an awful lot of money for a club that hasn't paid all of its bills. But are the two related? Is one that's marketing spend and?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't really answer that because it hasn't sort of been explained why they continually either pay creditors very late or not at all, because from what I understand there's a few other people chasing money from them as well.
Will that change with the CBD deal? Because that gives them cash flow rather than relying on the large.
He's obviously Sonny Bill's going to be the face of the CBD all, isn't it? And apparently that's. I mean, I know nothing about CBD all, but apparently it's big in America. So yeah, he's. I think is he going to get equity in that company? Yeah, I mean, if that obviously takes off and they're selling millions of vials,
health products.
Just as long as it doesn't, break the salary cap in the ways that Saracens may or may not have broken the spirit of the rugby.
What I didn't see with Saracens, did any players have boats? It was Cameron Smith and
some of the wines were cleaning the Allianz Stadium.
Yeah, for £100,000.
I'm sure that's why they've asked Toronto Wolfpack to go there to clear off their fine.
The other good news, drugs news from Sport last week, is that WADA have reclassified cocaine, and now it's not going to be treated as a performance-enhancing drug. As I facetiously said on Twitter, open season for the lads then. But yes, it's not going to be the full 2-4 year ban.
No, it's weeks rather than years now, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's been revealed that Bali is the place that all rugby league players should avoid. Or one particular
the bad day
nightclub.
for Fafita. Don't go there.
Why
it's the
would
wrong
you go
day for
there?
Fafita.
So you've just flown back in.
Yes.
Collected your thoughts.
Yes.
Slaughtered Great Britain in the paper in terms of marks for the
3 out
game
of
that they
10.
played at the weekend. 3 was a good mark.
Well, the third game was by far the worst.
But
Performance,
overall,
yeah.
before we talk about individual
Yep.
performers and matches, what was you? Have you had a good time? Is
Oh, I've had
International
a-
Rugby League back on the map? Do you think?
I've definitely had a good time. That's probably separate from the tour. But no, I think look, I think the Nines had promise. There was obviously things about it which could have been improved.
It'd be very easy to ditch it early because it's rugby league.
Yes, yeah.
If you don't have teething problems in your first one, you never will.
Exactly, and there were significant teething problems, but I think there was enough.
Deciding to play like they were playing 13 aside.
Yeah, some
Play
of
without
a teething
the
problem.
some of the selections were a bit odd. But yeah, I mean, Bankwest Stadium, fantastic stadium, but you probably don't have an event like that in Sydney, particularly so close to the end of the season, because no one cares about international rugby league there. But yeah, it's something different.
Format would excite you?
Yeah, I
Because
like
it's been
Nines.
the first time
It's-
really that you've.
From a journalistic point of view, it's different because you don't really write match reports. But no, it's an interesting concept, and I think you saw with Lebanon doing quite well.
Cook Islands.
Cook Islands, there was a lot of sort of unpredictable results. So I guess the playing field is a lot more level in Nines because it's really a game can hinge on one.
Because we
one
didn't
error.
get Australia against New Zealand in either of the finals, so that was really unpredictable. But it was.
Samoa,
We were saying the other week because we only get to watch it on telly, which is why it's important to have you here because you've actually been there. It's a bit like going to the darts. That after 20
Never
minutes
been to
you
darts,
get another
so, yeah.
game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
even
yeah.
if the one doesn't captivate you or you haven't got a dog in the fight, as I think we now have to call it, for this particular match, there's one coming that you might do. So you hang around, you have your beer.
Well, I've been to the Rugby Sevens in Hong Kong and at Twickenham, and essentially at those events, the rugby on the field is immaterial to the enjoyment and the atmosphere and the drinking.
Drinking champagne out of a Wellington boot in the back of your Range Rover.
Exactly. So that it's probably a different audience. It's not your traditional probably rugby league fans. So I think it's got merit. I mean, I think if we're going to commit to a World Cup every 2 years, there should be club events.
You have to be able to lead up. You have to know how to play it.
Yeah, because I talked to several of the England players after the Nines, and some of them had played. I think Liam Watson, Jermaine McGilvery saying they'd played maybe 9 years ago at an event at Henley, and that was it.
Yeah.
So
which was pretty low key compared to a World Cup.
Yeah, so to sort of go from that and not, it is a different level. It's a different
and
style of game,
it's
different
almost
fitness.
for a younger player as well.
It is.
It's a really good
more
way
mobile,
of blooding
yeah.
young talent in the international, which I think was a mistake that we might have made, that because we were going there touring anyway, we sort of had a halfway house.
Well, I think with the grand final being the week before, so none of those players were obviously involved.
Well, except that they were if they played for Wales.
Well, yeah.
Or,
none of the England players.
Or Fiji.
Yeah.
Who managed to get players out there
Yeah.
and played in the grand final.
But I think that probably affected the Great Britain tour because they really needed a warm-up match.
Yeah.
I think that showed in the Tonga game. They were quite rusty. Combinations weren't there, so they could have done with a warm-up match against whoever, whether it be New Zealand residents or whatever. But they probably needed something. So that did have a little bit of an impact.
So we've got the fixtures out for next year, which are it's got some innovations.
Headingley
Like
looks
we
good,
haven't
the
got
first
Easter Monday, and we've got Headingley, and
be colder.
All the Toronto fans can moan about
Magic
that.
back in Newcastle, and the Challenge Cup finals a bit more mid-season. But what we haven't got, we've got too many fixtures again, which don't give us windows for a nines or maybe an international game. Should we, if this nines tournament that you've just seen is a success, then should we not find a weekend
I think
where we play nines?
I mean, I think Magic would work well because it's an artificial fixture anyway. It's quite strange that you end up playing one team, maybe 3 or 4 times as opposed to, one twice. But I
we start
like
with
Magic.
Wigan and Warrington, we end with Wigan.
But I mean, you could conceivably at Magic you could throw open the championship as well. You
could have 16 teams.
Because I think I see with
Invitational
the
teams.
summer bash is apparently 2 teams won't be.
Toulouse and London.
Yeah, and I don't think the summer bash really has much appeal except for Rich.
He's like
He's on the he's on the Summer Bash marketing committee, but
I can't remember if I
yeah.
booked a holiday for the week it is. I can't remember.
So no, I mean that is the thing. I think you kind of need somewhere relatively warm,
Yeah.
or at least somewhat, because pouring rain isn't
It's not
conducive
quite
to So that is an issue, but
I mean, there was a big article in the Sydney Morning Herald this week by Roy Masters, who isn't normally wrong. He normally does break some stories about there's going to be a nines tournament in Fiji.
right.
And it's going to include mainly developing nations. There's going to be no Super League or NRL players, but he's hoping to get the likes of China. Well, he isn't. He's reporting that the likes of China and India are going to be playing. And again, nines is a great way of opening up new markets.
It is, yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, you need less players to be involved. I don't know where the
And you're not
Chinese and
going to
Indian
get
players.
flogged in 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of damage limitation. I mean, you see Fiji obviously at the nines. I would have thought Fiji good chance to win the whole thing. They didn't win a game. So it does throw up. And Tonga again, I think they lost to them. Only won one. They didn't proceed. So yeah, it is quite unpredictable. But yeah, I think obviously the NRL nines are back next year.
Which will only make their players even more attuned when the international version comes around.
Well, you look at the team that Australia played at the nines compared to the team that played the two tests. There's probably a handful of players.
Well, they basically are going on the field with maybe one big specialist forward.
And it's a forward who basically has the skills of a back and the engine of a back. So
Payne Haas, though.
yeah, Payne Haas to David Fafita. So you someone like a John Bateman, perfect for nines. Elliot Whitehead, these kind of guys, which I don't think either of them played in the nines. Obviously, Sam Tompkins was well suited to it.
Yeah.
Jackson Hastings would have been.
But he played in the grand final.
That's right. So he didn't. Yeah. So
Australia, they're coming over.
They are.
Sandy
They
is
are.
getting very exciting because
Quite
she
right.
says they're going to play Toronto. In Toronto.
yeah, I was reading.
Well, Mal's a fan.
Yeah, he is. I was reading League Weekly today and sort of confirmed some doubts about the whole. Because I was speaking to, at Eden Park the other week, I was speaking to one of the Kangaroos officials and saying, they want to play, St Helens and Leeds. I sort of went, well, it's the middle of the off-season. So,
But they can bring a slightly larger touring party and give some of their younger players a midweek.
no,
game
I
to
mean, but
play.
for, St Helens and Leeds, if it's mid-October, early November, they're either going to be just starting pre-season or in the middle of the holiday. I mean,
Yeah.
and no one really wants. You can't sort of throw.
It's more likely that they're going to be playing France
Yeah.
and possibly
That-
Jamaica at Headingley and.
Yeah, or Ireland maybe, or
Well, there's a European
England
Championship
Knights.
going on at the same time, but England Knights would be
Yeah.
good. And you could see why they would play in Canada.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if Mel realises that seasons are different now. Back in his day, it doesn't run over winter, but it would be great to see a
What, they
full
play in the
strength.
summer? Nobody told me.
It would be great to see a full strength, St Helens and a full strength Wigan against the Kangaroos, but they're not going to be at full
Or even
strength.
some composite teams. But
Yeah, but no, they are very keen. One interesting thing that I was told is they want a 50-50 gate share, so I don't know how.
Better get some tickets, haven't we?
no wonder we're going to Bolt.
It's like the old days when they used to play the Hull and Hull KR combined 13.
Well,
And the Leeds City 13, which they would
Leeds
the
Bromley
Leeds
also,
Rhinos,
yeah. Which is a bit like Great Britain.
Yeah.
And I think Mel Meninga might think the Kangaroos are a bigger drawing card than they actually are, because I remember 2016 Four Nations. It was about 5,000 to see them play Scotland.
I'm not sure
Craven
that
Park,
game was
so-
promoted in any way whatsoever.
Was that the
In
one?
rugby league?
We were there, we were there.
I was there. Yeah,
It was
I was there.
cold, it was miserable, it was
it
wet, nobody knew about
But-
the game.
Yeah, I don't think necessarily there's going to be,
Has there been a seismic power shift with Tonga beating Australia?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was, apart from obviously
Before
Great
we
Britain
slaughter Great
struggles.
Britain,
Yeah, which is
obviously.
coming.
But yeah, that
It's coming,
was
listeners. Wait, but out, it's coming soon.
that was amazing because they deserved it. It wasn't a fluke or anything like that. It wasn't a B grade a Australian team missing all that. It was a full strength team and they played them off the park.
The astonishing thing from this end was that we'd seen what Tonga had done against Great Britain,
Mm.
and I don't think too many people who we spoke
I didn't
to
see that coming.
or emailed in said they're not going to be able to get up twice in 2 weeks
That's
because
yeah,
they're very talented, but
Mm.
the squad is they can't make wholesale changes, and they've gone for the emotional high of beating Great Britain. They're not going to be able to do it again against the best team in the world, and they did,
Yeah.
and they looked comfortable doing it because they went behind and they didn't panic.
I think
Came back.
the Great Britain result spurred them on, and it was sort of like, well, because they've obviously had all that drama and infighting and threat of boycott.
I'm not sure it affected the players though.
I
I think they knew they were always going to be
because
playing.
it got so messy, and I think there was even some racial taunts from the chairman or ex-chairman. At some of the players, Tamalolo, Fafita. I think it did get quite, and I think there was either officials, saying to the fans or church leaders saying don't go out and support the team. So I think in the Tongan community it was quite bitter, but the fact that they beat Great Britain just sort of energised the whole thing from 2 years ago, and then to beat Australia, just sensational. I mean, it's interesting now. Where do you put sort of to use a Wayne Bennett expression, Great Britain / England?
Great England.
Great England. Where do they sit now?
Not so
Are they fourth in the world?
Well, no,
Are they second?
We don't exist, do we?
Great Britain don't rank.
No, but where
So England?
Where does England sit then?
I think because they haven't played, they'll still sit third. The rankings are out in mid-December.
Mm.
But what we have got is 4 pools of 4 at the next
Yeah.
World Cup. We've now got 4 seeds.
Yeah.
Which it would have been. You'd have assumed that Fiji might have been a seed on the basis of the fact that they reached the last 3 semi-finals. But to now have Tonga as a genuine potential winner of the World Cup.
And when you've got people like Tavita,
My only worry for them is that have they got 24 to 26 world-class players? Because in a World Cup you need to use.
Yeah, I don't think they do, but I think they've got some genuine elite. Tamalolo, probably one of the best top 5 in the world, and then
Absolutely.
you've
Well,
got,
look at the players they brought in for the Australian test who haven't played against Great Britain.
yeah,
Off Hengawi and
exactly, and they debuted a 18-year-old fullback who was sensational, who hasn't played.
who you would think will encourage other young kids to come forward and
Well,
pledge their
With
allegiance.
Tavita Pangai Jr., I mean, he could have played for. He's from Newcastle. He's from my hometown. He could have played for New South Wales and for Tonga, but he said no. I want to. I mean, and he's a star at Brisbane. So I think that's going to keep happening now because you want to be part of that Tongan.
As long as we stop
journey.
any Tongans going to Bali, we'll be alright.
Yes, yeah.
I just think it's a great story, and
it is, yeah.
And I think a lot of people here will be looking forward to them coming over in 2021 to see what they can do.
Can we ship 50,000 Tongans? I don't know. There's not a big Tongan community in Leeds, is there?
If
or
there is a
Batley?
Tongan community in this country, they will be there with their flags for sure.
Yeah, I know the atmosphere was amazing. That's the weird thing at the triple header at Eden Park. Great Britain, New Zealand was obviously the middle game. It's in New Zealand, you think, well, but it felt like a curtain raiser to Tonga and Australia, even though it was in New Zealand. Like New Zealand are not a bigger drawing card in their own country, Tonga are, which is just weird.
And
at so many
how
levels.
good?
It's good as well.
As well, is it? I know it hurts you to say, but how good is it that Australia have been beaten?
No.
Because one of the things that we've all talked about
Agree.
for years is that nobody will take the international game seriously. It is like brand All Blacks. You know they're not going to be beaten very often, but when they are,
And that resulted.
people then start going, they're not invincible. We'll,
No, definitely.
We'll go and watch the next time.
Well, that resulted in the rugby union that England did. Basically was the result of the tournament. No, I agree. I mean, I think Steve Mascott said it for a while when I think he said something along the lines of when Australia loses, it's good for the international. And you have to agree because just the scenes and what it sort of shows. And my question to Christian Wolfer in the presser was, do you think you can win the next World Cup? And he was like, yeah, we can. Because there is real momentum there, and that's what Australia being that dominant in the international game is not good. We want unpredictability.
Sonny Bill's finale when he's played his 2 years at
Will it be with Samoa?
With Samoa in the World Cup?
Is that confirmed from your sources?
No, but I
Sam
think
Burgess to Leeds?
I think that's well, could still happen. Hasn't said he's retired.
He has, hasn't he?
No.
I think two years for his shoulder to come back, and then
he might be a good healer.
I
Give it a
think
year.
the concern for him is that he doesn't go off the rails. That's the with his issues with his AVO and
Absolutely.
That's
Bring him back to Dewsbury.
Liversidge.
No problems in Dewsbury.
So before we talk about England,
Yeah.
great England.
Great England, yeah.
Anything on social media?
No, well, at the moment everyone's trying to work out flights to Toronto, and Sandy's trying to tell people where to get to.
I'd love to go to Toronto, but I think I might get lynched.
Well, you could tell them they'd be banned at the stadium like you are in League. You could turn up
You get to be a gal and jump on the fence.
I might have to wear a disguise or something, but I'm still waiting for my invite for next week at the
For
Emirates.
Thursday?
But
I think you could go. Gabardine Mac. Take this Tam O'Shanter. Nobody will recognise.
Graham says we should limit the number of crap overseas players. Of course we should. Invest in reserve grade. Marquee money should only be spent on current, very recent international players. Wayne Bennett should be sacked, says Mark. Abject failure. Wrong squad, wrong halfbacks, and no idea of the concept of Great Britain. When is Wayne Bennett being sacked, says somebody else. The problem is...
There's not a lot of love for Wayne.
No. Should we talk about the Great Britain thing to start with? Because...
Well, I think you've hit on something there, because there's two issues for me. One is, have we discredited Great Britain by bringing it back? And the second thing is, if we look at the performances themselves, have they been as bad as everybody is saying that they are? But I think you're right to start with, we missed a huge opportunity here. And what is the most disappointing thing for me is that we haven't honoured Great Britain in any way whatsoever.
Well, I mean, I just realised Sonny Bill Williams has been looking down on this for another programme.
He's there.
There he is.
And he only came back for the shoulder shave.
Sydney City Roosters.
Return of the prodigal Sonny.
Yeah, again.
And the wheel goes around.
Great Britain. The concept of, which I know they've done a lot of work trying to, and a lot of videos in the build up to the tour to remind us how great and important Great Britain is. But it does come across as just a way of selling a different kind of shirt for 50 quid a pop for 4 test matches. Because it's interchangeable now. We were looking at the previous Great Britain squads before we came on, and the squad from 2007, which was the last Great Britain side, and there were 0 Scots, 0 Welsh, and 0 Irish in there. There was one Samoan who counted as English on residency, so that doesn't count either.
And it wasn't Manu Tuilagi.
No, even Roger Chase came later. It's just the shirt. It's the days of people leaving Wales because they weren't getting paid officially to play rugby union, to play rugby league, have gone.
I think that's the most disappointing thing, is we haven't embraced the idea that it could have been something different. And that Wayne's comments have probably been, for me, even more disappointing than any performances, because it clearly has been England. This has been a trial for England in the 2021. Now, I don't know if I can blame Wayne too much for that, because the job he was given by Nigel Wood when he was appointed and Kevin Sinfield when he was reappointed was, can you win us the World Cup? And the most important thing for this sport in this country is if England perform to a very high level in the World Cup in 2021, ideally they need to win it. Now, anything he does in the lead up to, he's employed primarily to deliver that.
Also, does he know the difference?
Yeah,
if he doesn't know the difference, surely there should be someone in his ear saying...
The one thing I would say is we do him a discredit if we say that, because he is an internationalist.
Oh, yeah.
But for him helping to... Well, he was the catalyst for the Tri-Nations coming back, which was Great Britain. He tells the stories, and I do believe him, of sitting up all night on the farm, listening to...
On the radio, or the wireless.
So I think he does know the difference.
But then,
again...
the World Service.
Wayne's at the door. The part of the problem is that we have an identity crisis.
We do, in various...
Because we started as the Northern Union, We then became England.
Yes.
England included Welshmen, like the great Gus Risman.
Yes.
We'd only became Great Britain for the first time after the Second World War. We've interchanged Great Britain and England ever since. Is it any surprise?
Although people forget that, you just pretend.
But is it any surprise that we don't have an identity anymore? You know, the halcyon days of Great Britain in the modern past were the 80s into the early 90s, when players like, well, it's predominantly Welshmen, the Jonathan Davis and the Paul Moriartys and
Jim Mills.
I think he was slightly before that. But there was a strong Welsh presence in the Great Britain team, and there were some really big names. You know, almost Sonny Bill-esque in the Northern Hemisphere, of players of note transferring and moving from that shirt of Wales to the shirt of Great Britain. We don't have that anymore. We're not going to have that again. So, is it our fault for bringing back a concept that technically doesn't exist anymore? Or has Wayne been overly honest by admitting this weekend that he was using it solely for trialling England combinations for the next World Cup?
And without, of course, going off on a tangent, whose idea was it to bring back the Great Britain concept?
Was it Nigel Wood? Was it Wayne Bennett?
I believe it was Nigel Wood.
But it was only essentially coveted or put it on hiatus because of Sport England funding, wasn't it?
Well, it made sense in a way, because the wider question about whether Great Britain has any relevance or not is what are you actually doing with Scotland, Wales and Ireland?
So that's the thing, the development money in Scotland and Wales has been cut in the last 5 or 6 years, so how can you expect players...
Well, and at the same time that Great Britain are touring, Scotland and Ireland
are playing
are
games.
trying to qualify for that same World Cup that England are at. Now again, the Lachlan Coote, who is the token Scotsman in the Great Britain team,
he has a kill.
He ideally should have been playing for Scotland to make sure that they qualified for the World Cup.
Luke Douglas.
But
and Regan Grace should have been in the squad from the start.
There's certainly a case for him. I mean,
but also the farcical situation with this fourth test now is the only reason he's not gone to Papua New Guinea is because he hasn't had his injections. So Ash Hanley essentially gets a token, which no offence to Ash Hanley, he's had a great season, but he gets a token, cap.
I think the issue is money.
Well, that is a big...
Because this is let's cut to the chase. This is rugby league, and we don't have enough money. So the RFL at the moment find a way of generating some cash, and the way they do that is they bring back Great Britain. They sell a lot of shirts, and everybody gets wonderfully nostalgic about what Great Britain means. We don't transfer that into how we're going to select the players. We employ Wayne Bennett because A, he's already in Australia where the team are going, and B, we're already paying him to be the England coach.
He's already got his staff and whatever.
So to stick the Nines in there and Great Britain in there, it's the cheapest option. Is that why we've done it?
Well, that would be a big indicator for me. Yeah, I mean, you look at... I mean, you can argue over selections, and this player should have been. That's a matter of opinion, but was a 24-man squad for 4 games. Was that enough? I don't think so.
Well, I think the other thing as well is if you're going to bring Great Britain back, you make a concession to the fact that it's a genuine amalgamation of 4 nations. So your squad goes up to 30, and those extra 6 players, irrespective of their standard or ranking, are all from Scotland, Ireland and Wales. So maybe 2 from each nation.
Also, the other interesting part of the whole Great Britain, but England in another guys. I spoke to Joe Philbin before he made his debut a week and a half ago, and he'd obviously played for Ireland.
Yeah.
His dad's, I'm pretty sure it's his dad. His dad's from near Galway, and he was very proud to be, representing Great Britain. But all his family can unite. But he basically admitted after that he was going to be committing to England. Yeah. So it's sort of you have Ireland, Scotland, Wales, but you also have the England Knights. So
I think you're right. That we'll talk about selection.
It's the same thing with Tonga. It's the same thing with Tonga though, in the Pacific Islands. Like if those nations just become a breeding ground for Australia and New Zealand,
Alan's been on. He says to me, "Would I be knocking the GB Tour if they'd been winning?" I think I said before. It's just England in a different name. It's not the concept.
And that has happened before. It's not a new thing. But I just think if you're going to bring it back, you've got to give it that extra dimension. And the problem I have is that Joe Philbin should have been playing for Ireland to make sure that they qualified for the World Cup. But if we were going to go down the road of Ireland were playing at the same time, you could have brought Kyle Amor into that extended 30 because he played for Ireland. Even Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook, although he's towards the end of his career at the moment, they both played for Ireland with distinction in the 2017 World Cup. They probably didn't need to play in those World Cup qualifiers, but they would have been worthy additions to play in at least one of these test matches. Possibly the one against Papua New Guinea, where I think we're going to see most of the squad players, 6 half-backs nearly play. But I just, the danger is, unless we do something to improve the game in Scotland and Ireland and Wales, Great Britain is a waste of time. And I admire Wayne's honesty most of the time, but I just think he's gone the other way this time. He hasn't even tried that pretense of,
no,
this is Great Britain. I'm not doing this for England, really, even though we know that.
I think you're right. He's probably been a little bit too honest, but surely that's down to the RFL to manage him, and also Wayne.
Is he managing?
Well, that's a separate issue, though. If you hire him,
absolutely.
you know what you've got. You either set the mandate and say you got to do this. It's the same with the media. I mean, I think he did captain's run and post match. He did pretty much no media. I think Julie Stott spoke to him before the game, and that was more, from what she told me, more by chance than. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I think, as we know, rugby league in the UK, the coach has really got to be out there sort of selling it as well as coaching, and Wayne won't do that.
No.
So.
And I think it's safe to say that Mal Meninga has, Christian Wolf has. Madge Maguire.
Yep.
There is a clear revival in New Zealand Rugby League at the moment. He's been at the forefront of telling people what it is he's trying to do and taking the odd knockback, but we're going to have a new ethos around the team.
Obviously, the Kangaroos get criticised a lot, and a lot of it's valid from this part of the world, but they do go out to PNG every year. They go to Fiji. They are actually building the game, and that was the key point that Mal Meninga, because I asked him at the before the Impact game, are you disappointed you're not playing the Lions? Because obviously that was I didn't say you're running scared, but because I would have been running scared of Mal. But no, he basically just went, no, we're focusing on the Pacific and blah blah blah. And to be honest, I mean that kind of strategy is paying off.
Yeah.
But the other issue is, and I remember John Keir said this at the World Cup 2 years ago, because Wales got 50, beaten by 50 or whatever. The gap now between Scotland, Ireland, Wales, France, and which we saw get smashed by Australia A, as they're now being called. They are, seriously, that's what the Junior Kangaroos are now, Australia A. It's getting worse.
Yeah.
So,
but that's partly because whilst we laud the fixtures coming out, we're still playing too many games. We have no international windows.
Well, and also the NRL is getting more money and getting stronger because a lot of those Fijians, Samoans, etc., all play in the NRL.
That sort of moves the debate to how bad have Great Britain or Great England been. I mean, bearing in mind that before we talk about perhaps their individual performances, a lot of the nations like Fiji, PNG, Samoa, Tonga are improving. New Zealand 10 years ago, because so many of their players now qualify to play in the week in, week out, high intensity of the NRL. And obviously to have a Hunters team in the Queensland competition, now we're going to have a Fiji team in the Ranamasi competition. I think 2 NRL teams are starting their pre-season in Fiji, playing a friendly.
If you don't have a Fijian winger these days, you're not doing it right.
But it works for both parties.
It does.
They're uncovering the Micah Sivos,
cheap talent. Yeah.
But also it's raising the standard of the Southern Hemisphere. Surely that's point number one on the agenda.
And it's also encouraging kids in Fiji. I can be Sivu, I can be Semi-Rad.
Could we not do the same in Ireland and Scotland and Wales if we actually had a development plan and or diverse?
Just imagine if we had an extra £200,000 lying around we could have spent on development officers.
And that's again, it goes back to money, and you can't fund everything, but theoretically,
what's the money being spent?
Well, you would say that £200,000 earmarked to keep Odsal mothballed as opposed to £200,000 to start a development in Ireland, is not a proper use of limited resource.
Ralph Rimmer's been down in Australia for a
I
month
saw him on
on a scooter.
I saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so did he need to be there? I mean, I know they had the International Congress in Sydney.
He didn't need to be videoed on
did
the
he?
scooter.
Well, Steve Maskell for you. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you have to sort of wonder what money's being spent, and you know why is every game of rugby league on the Our League app being broadcast when no one's watching it?
Sorry, because I'm getting in trouble again.
I was
two pub teams, you know,
covering the Ireland game at the weekend against Italy in the rain in Santry. I had openly admit I was not there. I was doing it off the live stream.
Right, so it was a bit better than the game in Spain the week before, which was
well, there was
not
some
great.
issues.
Which
Although
one
again,
of the players told me.
I think it's safe to say that the players who complained that day with every justification were expecting there, and reality is somewhere down there. And that did need managing and wasn't particularly well managed on either side. But I think that was smoothed over pretty much, and there was a degree of understanding, I think, from the Irish, particularly Stuart Littler, who was brilliant in saying he thought that the Spanish were coming on leaps and bounds. So, yes, there were clearly some issues, and that needs looking at. But there were a couple of Irish players from the domestic league, one of whom has now signed for Huddersfield, Ronan Michael.
He's been there a while, hasn't he?
But he's now gone full time.
Oh, he's gone full time, so he's gone from the academy.
Contract.
That's great.
But he originally started playing his rugby league in the domestic competition in Ireland. Now you only need to find each club only needs to find a Fijian winger or equivalent thereof, an Irish second rower, and it's more than paid for itself. And I think that again, Stuart Littler, who is brilliant talking up domestic rugby league and saying what he wants to do to help them now that they've qualified for the World Cup, he is saying that there is talent there, and not only is there talent playing domestic Irish rugby league with very limited resources, but he's seen players playing Gaelic football and Irish rugby union who could transfer to rugby league if the pathway was
Coventry
there.
Bears have done. Well, they've done quite a bit.
Good old Alan, who used to, an ex-Irish international.
But they seem to, they've brought quite a few.
But as a sport in the Northern Hemisphere, perhaps part funded by International Rugby League grants, do we not?
I think
Great
that comes
Britain only
into
means something when we've got a stronger constituent part.
I think you need to have a pathway. So whether it's a Dublin professional club, whether it plays in League One or the Championship, and then you've got you're a 10-year-old Irish kid and you play rugby union, and you're like, oh, hang on, this team comes up, and I can actually. There is a pathway for me.
And I think again, if you're serious about your international game, then you look at somebody like Michael McAlory, who played brilliantly for Ireland in the last World Cup, and you give him the incentive of playing for Great Britain every fourth year. So, Kyle Amor might want to play for Ireland a bit more if there's the prospect of touring with Great Britain in 2023. Maybe not 2023 for him, but Oliver Roberts is going to get swallowed up by England at some stage, isn't he, if he maintains his level of pro. But he needs to be told, stick with Ireland. Here are the Irish fixtures. You've got a mid-season fixture against England Knights. It'll be branded as England, but it might be the Australian.
Same situation with Tonga. Now that they're playing
and
New
you're playing mid-season.
New Zealand and Australia every year.
And you're playing Dublin. It'd be a great experience for the England team, but you want to be playing against John Bateman because it might be the two of you playing for Great Britain in 3 years' time.
You've got to have regular, top-class fixtures, not
absolutely.
And
yet we haven't got an international gap again in the Super League season. Although I gather the RFL are asking for it, even though the fixtures are out.
As if Wayne Bennett doesn't speak to the media, does his team manager take those positions or opportunities? No one's speaking to you. No.
In terms of the media, I mean, Phil Daly did a fantastic. He did a fantastic. I mean, there was only probably myself, Julie Stott, and Steve Maskell, and Dave Woods to look after. It was very. But no, I mean, obviously there's others, the Kiwi media and some Australian. But no, he did a fantastic job. But yeah, I mean, obviously Wayne marches to the beat of his own drum, and I think finance comes into it. Still does, yeah. But yeah, I mean it's a separate issue, and yeah, I mean, people saying about sacked, you can't really sack him
Well,
if his contract's up. You
here
just
we
don't
go.
renew his
So on
contract.
Sunday,
Hmm.
after
Well, he
Saturday
shakes the
morning,
hands of his team, saying thank you very much.
Ralph's there, and they
Ralph won't,
Nigel will be there.
Ralph won't be anywhere near him.
whoever Ralph's representative is in Papua New Guinea on a scooter. Can you imagine if the head of the FA was on a scooter? He's had a shave now and everything. So England, Great Britain, keep doing it. It is purely accidental.
Great England.
So when Great Britain, the Great Britain Rugby League Lions, sorry to give them their full title, beat Papua New Guinea in front of
If
So when Great Britain lose to Papua New Guinea on Saturday morning,
happened in 1990, didn't it?
having seen the women win, and can we get Emily Rudge in for the men's team? Can we get her in there? She can score all the tries. When they lose, then Great Britain, what's Ralph for? What are we going to do?
They're going to say,
because we barely won the World Cup.
they're going to
And we
say,
didn't
I'm
lose England
terribly
last year."
sorry, you can't be coach of Great Britain anymore, but do carry on with it.
Isn't this part of the problem, by the way? We've just come off a year where we've played New Zealand 4 times, 3 at home, and then we're expecting people to get up at 3 in the morning to watch them play against them twice. So, we've just beat Great Britain, we just beat New Zealand in the Test series over here. We nearly won the World Cup, were it not for your man falling over. Is Wayne Bennett as bad as people are making out to be this weekend, or is, as the series in Australia with some people, I was on the Fair One the Freak podcast last week and they said this, and I think Mark used a different phrase on Twitter on Saturday. People forget, I know this is a long tortuous way to get to the question, people forget, it happens in football all the time, that people aren't as good as they always were. Brian Clough, we've all seen his decline in his last interview with John Watson. No, it's Barry Davis, isn't it? And it's a great interview. But there you can see a man who knew his time was up, and it was up before he went. Is it time to say, Wayne Bennett, you are a great coach, you have been a great coach, but perhaps now, for England, because we're talking about England now, you're not the man for the job. Even though you are one of the greatest coaches of ever, now is the time we say goodbye, save a few quid.
I'll let you go first because you've seen him in action.
Well, I think
Whereas
there's
I'm going on.
yeah. I think there's 2 issues if they don't give him another contract. Obviously, there's 3 games against the Kangaroos and then a World Cup. So is that enough? Is that enough
The
time?
maximum number of games he would get
Probably 4.
would be 5.
Yeah, 5.
Because if they fit in a mid-season
And they
international,
play 1 before the World
and
Cup.
they play a warm-up game, so
It's
the
not a lot.
maximum is 5.
If you bring in Sean Wayne or you bring in a completely new coach,
and I think
new
that's
staff,
the perfect way to look at it.
yeah. I mean that's a legitimate. That's
That
a
he has
legitimate
built up whatever he's built up.
thing.
It hasn't been destroyed in these 3 games.
It's a different team. It is. I know we can say it isn't, and it isn't, and it isn't a different team. But essentially, it is a different team because he's not going to have Lock and Coop, next year.
But he's been building from 2016 when he came in.
Yeah.
Very nearly won a World Cup in 2017. To being given the job of winning the World Cup in 2021. He's so far down that road. Do you stop it now?
I don't personally. I don't think you do.
But now we're going to sell no tickets for the Test series because everyone hates Wayne Bennett now.
But it also raises the
We
question.
need to make the money.
Isn't that how you sell tickets? You're a wrestling guy, Rich. Isn't that how you get a heel?
Well,
He could be the heel.
He could be.
Yeah.
But we're asking for people to pay for something.
But we'll give
We
away
need-
for £5.
We're going to get KSI off the board. Get KSI in as the coach.
Oh,
You think
don't
Logan
start me
Paul...
on bloody YouTubers.
I have no idea what
The
you
world's
young
gone.
kids
The
are
world's
talking
gone
about.
to the
Well, I was going to
toilet.
rant about it last week, and then I realised that the people who actually paid my wages were sponsoring the fights. I thought it'd be a good idea not to. Sometimes I have good
Compromise.
First
Compromise.
question, if Wayne wasn't going to be there. And I think in terms of continuity, and you talk to the players more than I do,
The players love. Well,
there is a real bond there.
yeah, they play for him.
They understand what he wants.
Yeah.
And he's getting them to do something that they can't do on a week-to-week basis here because the level of intensity at international level is higher than they're used to playing. So there is some logic and merit to keeping him in play. If you didn't have him, first question is, who would you have?
Well, yeah. For for me, there's not really many. That's the thing. There's not many candidates.
Well,
I mean, you could say Sean Wayne.
Sean Wayne's reputation has been massively enhanced by not having the job.
Yes.
He is Rich's Graham Onions in this case.
My only analogy I have. That's the only one I have.
But what I would say with Sean Wayne is one of the reasons he was released from Wigan, and we know some of the politics behind the actual mechanics, was because they were playing a brand of rugby that the board decided they needed to change. It was successful, which is one thing. But Wayne Bennett's been criticised for playing boring rugby. What did Sean Wayne's Wigan play?
And they talk about style, surely results at international level, because you only play.
And he has no experience of playing.
If you win a World Cup playing boring rugby, you still win a World Cup.
Yeah. But it's very hard to criticise one method of coaching for being stereotypical, and then bring in another coach who is so structure based.
Also, Sean Wayne's sort of, not philosophy, but his methods is very much a week in, week out, build that bond, get players to run through brick walls. Does he have that impact when you've only got the players for 3 weeks?
Well, and you've only got 3 games to put it into practice.
Yeah.
So Sean Wayne, I'd say jury out. I mean, he's been out the game, for 8 months? And there hasn't been a clamour from either clubs or countries to bring him in at the moment. I'm sure an opportunity will arise where he will come back into the sport. Darryl Powell?
I think he's a very good coach, but he's only won a League Leaders' Shield. So in terms of records...
And that's important internationally.
Well, it is, yeah. You've got to be able to win things, consistently. I think that, pretty much all the top coaches at the international level have done that.
Ian Watson?
I don't think he's ready. I think he's
being groomed as an assistant on this tour, under Wayne.
I think in the future, but not now. I mean, you could say maybe Brian McDermott. I mean, he's, a lot of success. Whether he would be interested,
that would help with media relations.
Yeah, everyone's right. Adam Cuthbertson, he's one of those.
No, he's wrong nationality.
No, he's English.
He's from Warrington, isn't he? Family Warrington.
Would you go from Wayne Bennett, the overseas coach, to anybody else, the overseas coach?
The Steve McLaren appointment. Sven and Fabio Capelli, you're foreign, we don't like you. Get Steve McLaren in.
Some of the tweets on Saturday were basically, it's because he's Australian and you need passion, which I find quite funny. That
passion is the most overrated thing in sport. And
professional sport,
The English are the worst for it because we think, you've got to have passion, you've got to have man shouting on the touchline. It's Stuart Pearce scoring that penalty against Spain. It's all that kind of crap.
I know England didn't win the final, but Eddie Jones did fairly well.
Well, give Eddie Jones a job.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor Bayliss won the World Cup. Yeah. He's not English coach.
Passion.
But what we're saying is at this stage to relieve Wayne of his England duty, where he spent so much time building up England to be ready for a World Cup, and he'll have some players that clearly have been injured for this tour back again.
You look at the players who are out at the moment, which I think it's been forgotten quite good, particularly when you put Sam Burgess and Sean O'Loughlin, who've been pillars of that team for over a decade, and Tommy Makinson, the Golden Boot winner, and James Roby, one of the best players in Super League.
Who's proven at international level.
Yeah, and I think it's also shown up a real lack of depth in certain positions, particularly centres.
Well, that raises now the
and that's been the case for how long? Like 20 years?
These games. Have we grossly overreacted to these performances? The first thing is...
Somewhat.
Have we underestimated the teams that they played?
Yes, I think so.
Because
definitely.
First of all, we've had to go to the other side of the world where our record is not great. We don't have a list of test matches against New Zealand that we tend to win on New Zealand soil. We more often than not lose. But we've not played a team like Tonga before, and as you say, without a warm-up game, that's almost the toughest game you can play first up when you go to that part. So have too many Great Britain fans who are calling for the heads of anyone and everyone need to take a step back in the perspective of the quality, because New Zealand have improved remarkably even from mid-season when they were blown away by Australia.
Yeah.
Have we given the opposition enough?
It's also a New Zealand team without Sofa Solomona, Jesse Bromwich. They're missing a few players, but I think they've been underestimated definitely. I mean, you look at Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, if he's not one of the best players in the world.
Well, game breaker.
Yeah.
You know, the first test, which could have gone either way, one piece of brilliance from a world-class player is the difference.
They keep doing that against us. I remember the World Cup semi-final.
Well, what people forget, I think, about that World Cup semi-final, everybody talked about, quite rightly, Sean Johnson's outrageous try at the end. But Dean Fare's pass.
Oh, yeah. That was ridiculous.
Like, if that had happened in any other game at any other time, you would have just been focusing on that piece of skill. But because it was so dramatic at the end, it was almost like that got forgotten a little bit. But it's those moments in the big games that the big players come up with.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've done that. That's one of the failings. But I do think we've underestimated the two nations that we've played so far.
Yeah.
In defence of Wayne Bennett from Allen, look at Eddie Jones and the Union team. They had a blip leading up to the World Cup, but they were there when it mattered. Same for Bennett and England for the World Cup. This is our blip.
Well, the next thing I was going to say was if you break down every game, there have been moments in those games where you don't get a lot of chances at international level. You have to take them. So against Tonga, the one chance in the game was that last play before half-time, where they came up with a 16-pass move that in any other sport would have been played on the news reels ad infinitum. Basically, that was the difference between the teams. Yeah. And that's a piece of skill that you wouldn't want to like. You know, I don't know how you defend that.
Well, that's the thing. I was at the game and I remember watching a replay of it. They defended it quite well. They were, they were sliding. They were coming in. They weren't committing too many players. And Tonga were just side to side, nothing on. And then I think it was Jennings breaks a tackle and puts in a perfect grubber. You couldn't really defend against that. But yeah, that was the difference. And in the second test, the first one against New Zealand, the second game of the tour, it was basically Bromwich's
tackle.
Yeah.
Well, there were two.
But the
two
worst
breaks.
performance was the third one.
Well, I'm saying there were two breaks down the right-hand side in the second test. One where McGillivray could have passed inside, chose to hang on to it. But again, I think you've got to be there to decide whether that was the right decision or not. And then McGillivray trying to get the ball down and Bromwich coming from absolutely no right to make that tackle. No. But again, in the big minutes of the big games, that's what wins you them. Even this week, which was by far the most disappointing, at 20 points to 8, which is not a winning margin necessarily, we had 3 possible tries disallowed.
Yeah.
Now again, that's because we weren't good enough to take those chances. So Bateman couldn't quite get his finger down before Tuivasa-Sheck. Connor couldn't quite drag the ball in. He challenged for the kick. He almost called that kick, and I think perhaps we could have scored off that. And then the Blake Austin one in the corner that he knocked on. Allied to that, and this is where I find the criticism of Wayne Bennett missing some of the points, that often it's the players rather than the coach. Tom Burgess coughing the ball up on the first tackle from a tap penalty under no pressure. James Graham and Alex Walmsley knocking on at the play the ball cold.
There was a lot of errors, yeah.
Now, though you wouldn't have got odds before the game that those three players of such international experience would make such basic errors.
I think compounding that is the selections which have gone on a fast school when you've got Blake Austin.
I agree, but
Jack Hughes in the centre.
But we've also just lauded Tonga, who played Katoni Staggs at scrum half.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and when I look at the great Australian teams, it's often been, we've got guys that play in the same position, but we've got to find a way of integrating them into the team. Yeah. So even though you might be a centre, we're going to play you on the wing. Even though you might be a scrum half, we're going to play you a hooker. I think we get too hung up about playing players out of position. I think you hit it bang on the head when you said we just haven't got enough quality players.
I think that's definitely part of it, but I think taking 7 halfbacks and 2 wingers and 1 centre.
But was that,
and then the injuries which have been unfortunate.
Yeah,
Gildart, Thompson and Gildart in the first game.
That's the other thing about Tonga, that you're going to play the biggest, most mobile pack in the world, and you lose your one
best
player who is big and mobile after 10 minutes. And little things like that you can't legislate for. But even if Bennett said, "Well, I want to have a look at some combinations effectively for England in case I've got some players injured,"
yeah, he shouldn't be doing that.
No,
that's the thing.
But is that behind it as well? That
but that just basically shits all over the whole concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what there's
Yeah.
more than one issue.
Yeah, I
here.
know. I think there's a multitude of issues.
And
that-
the easy thing to do is for people to go straight on social media and go sack Bennett.
Mm.
But it doesn't actually solve the fact that we haven't got enough quality three quarters.
Mm.
And yeah, Makinson and Percival were really missed, but they weren't available.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned Australia A and what they did to France. You look at that team, and if that had been the full Australian national team and they were all under 23 years of age, it would have still been a damn fine team.
Yeah.
We haven't got that depth because all the issues that we've always talked about for years and years and years about playing too many games, overexposing our players, not having that tier of intensity up from the Super League competition. You know, there's people saying that Super League's getting better every year, and it's referenced by the fact that it's a closer competition, and that then leads into a debate about it's great that we've got the salary cap. I don't see it. I see Toronto buying Sonny Bill Williams and everybody in the game going, that's a big story, we'll put you on the back page. To me, Simon Moran now needs to pick up the phone and go, right, well, if they've got Sonny Bill, we want the next best player.
But they've got Gareth Winnop.
But
They tried to sign two
Gareth
on me.
Winnop.
But the whole idea of having a salary cap was twofold. One was so that everybody had a chance of winning the competition. We're entering our 25th year of Super League and only 4 teams have won it. So the salary cap hasn't worked on that front. And the other was to self-regulate clubs from themselves so they didn't go bust. Well, we're not allowed to mention the team not far from here because we talk about them too much apparently, or we don't like them.
Yeah, I don't.
But the salary cap didn't help them, did it? So all of this about getting the right level of intensity of competition to have enough players that can make the step up to international level all needs addressing.
Well, I think that's it does come back to several issues when you've got participation, coaching standards, the pathway, lack of reserves. Yeah, they do feed into each other. There's no easy answers. There's no quick fix.
The only easy answer is the same answer that we've had for years and years and years, and that you have less teams in the top flight, you have less games, and you have a greater intensity of competition.
Well, I have advocated.
I mean, it's really interesting. Shane Richardson's written something today about what he sees the game going forward in the Southern Hemisphere, and he again is talking about how important the international dimension is and how we've got to put that back. He wants 22 games in the NRL to accommodate more international rugby league. He wants a 9 circuit now that he's... Well, Mike, we're at 29 already. Plus playoffs, plus the Challenge Cup. We're never going to compete.
Something's got to give.
Yeah, if they're talking about coming down from, what was it, 26 in the NRL with no Challenge Cup, and they want to go to 22, we're miles behind.
Well, I've said for a while that there's three leagues, 3 tiers can't be sustained with the amount of clubs and the amount of distribution that goes out. It'd be better concentrating it and then you pull the talent, but that's just my
But then that directly feeds back into the fact that do you pick unbalanced squads because we sort of mentioned this last week and threw it out to the good people that listen to this programme. There wasn't a huge clamour as to who hadn't been selected when the squad was announced. We all went, a lot of halfbacks in there. Let's hope a winger doesn't get injured. But nobody really came up with 5 or 6 alternative players. We were talking about Liam Watts is a bit unlucky. Stefan Ratchford probably could have been thrown in there for his utility rally.
Yeah, he would have been handy because
and maybe Regan Grace. But again, I defer to the fact that Wayne Bennett at the moment doesn't think he's physically developed. Now, I don't know whether that's right or not, but I would presume. I think his speed more than makes up for that.
Yeah, I think it's probably that he likes big wingers.
Yeah.
He likes big bodies. He likes.
And the thing about Wayne Bennett, and I don't know if this is right or not, and again, you all know far better because you've seen his teams play in the flesh. He seems to have this belief that if you can stay with a side for 60 minutes, you can beat them in 20. But to do that, you've got to take your chances, which is what we didn't do in the World Cup. We actually stayed with Australia for over an hour. We had that one chance that we couldn't take, which may or may not have won the World Cup, but was clearly a turning point moment. And he's doing it again in this series, that if you can be level or level-ish after 60 minutes, we play our best rugby then when Darryl Clark comes on. Now that's no criticism of Josh Hodgson, because he might be needed for that first 60 minutes to keep it tight. And then when the opposition are being almost ground down in the arm wrestle, it's Clark that can come on and open them up, and that frees up Jackson Hastings a little bit more. That seems to be the way he plays. I don't know whether that's right or wrong, because I'm not a super coach and he is. But you've got to have enough players to be able to change things off the bench, and we haven't got that.
Well, I think in terms of how the game's played more in the NRL, it is more about completions and defence and keeping your errors down and then winning that arm wrestle. And that's how the Kiwis played. That's how Australia plays, New South Wales, Queensland. A lot now. I mean, I know a lot of people want to throw back to the 80s and the 70s and we're going to play the English way and that sort of thing. But the English way has been getting beaten for 50 years.
Absolutely.
Like, it's not working, and it's not going to win you. It may win you the odd game, but it's not going to win you a series or a
World Cup.
You know, where you've got to win 4 or 5 games against, you know, top opposition. So yeah, it is difficult. I think in terms of the players, and you talked about selections. I mean, yeah, Regan Grace. I mean, Wayne obviously has his favourites and he sticks with those. I don't think
he's very loyal.
I don't think Ryan Hall should have been picked 4 games. And to be honest, he's a bit too one-dimensional for me anyway. And I'm not the coach, but he's a bit too one-dimensional as a player. Jermaine McGilvery admitted he'd had I think he said to me, a shit season.
Well, I think Wayne told him he'd had a shit season.
Yeah, well, he said that to me at the Nines. You know, I think he could have done, you know, with being left out. Not the end of his England career, but obviously Tommy Makinson was the automatic pick. He'd make it. And then if you don't take Regan Grace, then who is it? You know, is it Josh Charnley?
Well, it's Ash Hamley, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't think Ash Hamley's probably at the stage in his career where he's ready to play elite level Test football. So, yeah, and then when you look at the centres, again, there's just a lack of options, particularly with Percival being injured. Watkins is not at his best. And who else? Josh Griffin? I don't... Yeah.
You see, you give Tom Burgess 3. Not a good night, you said. Tim says he's got hands like feet. Stephen says, no, we're an explicit podcast, I can say what Stephen says. Burgess has hands like cow's tits.
I think someone tweeted
that. Graham is at a 13. Why didn't Griffin go as one of the best left centres in Super League? He could also play back row or wing. Regan Grace and Sam Gonkin should have been in the squad. Liam Lott should have been nailed on in front of Hill. Clark is Farban and Hodgson. There's Stephen. He's got 4 people liking and laughing at his thing. The English and GB kicking game is dire. If Bennett wants a halfback to control the game, he's a better halfback with an excellent kicking game like Mark Sneed. Oh, don't say that name.
I think, Gareth Widdop again. I mean, he's a class player, but he hasn't really had much miles in his legs, has he? So.
I mean, again, it's easy from 12,000 miles away. I just think Lomax has had such a good season at 6 that even if you protect him for the first 20 minutes by sticking him at fullback, at some point you swap him and Widdop round. Because I think that Lomax with the ball in his hands offers so much more than Widdop does at the moment. And I understand that for the early part of a game, when you are trying to keep it tight, Leeds did it with Yestin Harris all those years ago. You know, the absolute masterstroke from Graham Murray that he started him at fullback for the first 20-25 minutes of games, and when the opposition was starting to get a little bit tired, moved him up to stand off, and he was man still that year because he absolutely cut teams apart. But he protected him for the early part of the game, and then used him as almost like a different weapon. And he did that with the 2 hookers as well. That he had Terry Newton on at the start, who was there to beat the opposition up, and Lee Jackson coming on after 20 minutes. And that combination of Lee Jackson and Yestin Harris gave you a completely different dimension.
Isn't it?
Yeah, and England or Great England haven't had that balance.
No.
Now I don't know if that's because Wayne is too intransigent in moving players and he's got a way of playing, or whether at the moment we just don't have enough quality players to change things. I think Tom Burgess is very fortunate to be an England prop forward.
Perhaps his brother was, didn't it?
I don't think he's had a particularly good season.
Which Wayne would have seen week in, week out in every training session.
Yep. Well, he is one of those players who, and that's why I think players love him, because, you know, if you're his player, he'll stick through you thick and thin. He'll pick and stick as the Queenslanders.
And I think he's
say.
looked at Liam Watson, probably thought, yep, his game. Looked at Liam Watson, probably thought, yep, his game this year has vastly improved. But we cannot afford at this level of rugby to be giving away a penalty. So yeah, he can get the ball out. I like that. He can certainly tackle. He's doing 50 a game. A lot of the indiscipline that was in his game.
Yeah, the
Hog.
headbutts, etc. Yeah.
But you look at the penalties that are given away at crucial times in international games, and they hurt you a lot more than they do in Super League games. Now, I don't know whether that's the reason why Wayne or Kevin Sinfield or Jamie Peacock or Auntie Madge the cleaner at Red Hall thought that that's why he shouldn't be in the squad. But I would have taken him as a squad player, because I'm not sure Tom Burgess has earned the right to be there. And that would be my criticism of the selections.
Yeah.
You can't say you're picking on form if there are people like Ryan Hall and Tom Burgess in there whose form hasn't been good enough.
So, some people would say perhaps that some of the backroom positions at the Great Britain squad are jobs for the boys. Some people would say that.
Some
You
people.
just did.
Some people would say that. Especially with their great records at club level. At Hull Kingston Rovers. Peter says, don't think Jackson can play in a structured side and almost a free role at Salford. We're going to also structured see how he goes next season.
You can't expect him to play a style that you do in Super League in the international level. That's just nonsense.
I'm not sure he's done too much wrong. I just
No.
don't think he's had the licence to do enough.
I think you saw in the second game when the game opened up, and he
And even in
looked
the
quite
third
good.
game,
Yeah.
the
Well, the
lot
effort,
revolved around
the
him.
effort was there. He was trying to make things happen, but as a team, the performance was bad. So I mean, I don't think you can single out.
And you
any-
need to play. I mean, again, two of the guys that came back into that New Zealand team this week had a massive.
Oh,
performance.
Sean Johnson was amazing.
Johnson
wasn't
and Smith. You know, again, you've got to admire Michael Maguire, because Brandon Smith is one of the emerging talents in the NRL, and for a disciplinary reason that they managed to keep in house, but may have involved alcohol. He dropped. It's a brave decision in a 2-match series.
It's good coaching.
But when he comes back,
Yeah.
makes a hell of a difference.
Well, when
Now,
Cody
Sean Johnson is too big a player to drop, not for Michael Maguire.
well, he got
How
the,
good was he when he came back?
Yeah, he got the desired result, didn't he?
Oh, he was fantastic.
And when you've got, you can bring Cody Nicarima in, who's a very good player,
And
and makes 50 odd tackles.
Benji Marshall with perhaps his last game.
Yeah, I mean he was great on Saturday as well. Him and Johnson worked so well together. So yeah.
But we didn't have that. We didn't counter that. Widdow and Hastings didn't offer the same.
In the words of the coach,
But the Kiwis were playing behind a winning pack. The Kiwis were playing behind a winning pack.
They'd improved in the week, like several notches above how
And
they played the week before.
we don't have enough players that can do that, because they don't have to do it every week in Super League. They don't have enough international games. Now the Kiwis play 2 games against Australia every year. That must help.
Oh, definitely.
we've gone backwards. That's what the coach said.
Well, we've gone backwards from the week before. I don't think he said.
Coach said.
Well, we've gone backwards from the week before. I don't think he said compare us to 1988.
I was just looking. So I was thinking, going back to the Great
Bring back Al Rayleigh.
Going back to the
Supercoach.
Great Britain point. Great Britain, this great brand which we're all buying into. How many Test matches in this country do they ever play outside of England?
What you mean in Ireland and Scotland and Wales?
Yeah. The current consonant parts.
I think the answer to that is probably
consonant parts.
I think the answer to that is probably nil.
Apparently played one at Tynecastle, but I don't know when that was. According to 1911.
Well,
that
that wasn't Great Britain.
it was England. Yeah, there's 11-all draw. So why England penny Scotland?
Can you
Crown
explain?
8,000, so that's not bad.
Can you explain why England's playing Australia at Bolton?
We were talking about that just before you arrived. I think again it goes back to money.
Cheap.
That it almost gives you a guaranteed sellout in game one. And then as the bean counter at Red Hall, who have not a bean to rub together at the moment, it would appear. You rub your hands together and go, financially, we know this tour's going to be a success. The other thing is, apart from the Etihad, what venues are there in the northwest of England?
You think?
But if you've got a game in Yorkshire, I mean, it's not really far from Leeds to Bolton. It's not really far from Leeds to Bolton, is it? I mean, yeah. I just would have thought. I just thought Newcastle would have been
but then I think they are. It's like, somebody.
It's not going to sell out St James's Park. But you might
somebody
get
quite,
25,
said quite justifiably, if we're going to Arsenal in the World Cup, why aren't we having a dry run at Arsenal in this Test series? Because I think you perhaps detract from the event that is going to the Emirates for a semi-final. If you can't sell out a semi-final, hopefully one that England are in, you shouldn't be staging the competition in the first. So I think to go to Tottenham, which is the state-of-the-art
I think it's great.
stadium in England, actually makes sense. I think the thing about Newcastle is that we're opening the World Cup there in 2021. Yeah. I think to take a Test match against Australia there and maybe it not sell out, or you're almost detracting from,
because it could be
great.
We're taking a big event.
And no offence to anyone from Bolton, but the appeal of Bolton internationally.
No, I think it's the northwest of it. I would have said if you can't get the Etihad, which is the right side. I would have said if you can't get the Etihad, which is the right size stadium, because the rugby league fans have vetoed Liverpool. We don't like it there. The seats are too small.
I don't mind Anfield, but we have been there a lot, so it is overkill.
So I think
but we're at Bolton every 5 minutes now.
Yeah, I think we're going there because it's 28,000. We haven't played the Aussies since the World Cup final.
So you like to think that there will be a big crowd for that?
Well, if that isn't sold out, we might as well forget it. But I think that's the logic behind it. We need to take it somewhere that the BBC can go around the ground and show every seat's taken, and maybe even if we're clever, we can announce that it's sold out a month before and it's the hottest ticket in sport that day. But
if we do that, let's not take the example of the FA who said, "Oh yeah, England versus Germany women is sold out," and then announce a crowd of 77,000 at Wembley.
But I think you're right that it's about ambition and imagination.
Yeah,
we haven't shown it with that first Test venue. Have we announced the venues and dates earlier?
Which they should have done.
Which most sports do.
Why didn't they announce them at the same time as the fan club thing, which they announced the day before?
I would have possibly had Manchester if they wanted a game in the North East.
Well, that's what I would have.
But not Old Trafford, because that's where we had the grand
I would have
final.
thought you kind of go for big
cities and then London. Although, as we said, there's probably a very good reason, like the NFL have already pre-booked it, but your first game really should be in London, because you can't lose with that. In a 3-match series, we could be going to Tottenham.
And you should
Great Britain or England already having won the series.
You should be able to tie into a fair expat pop, to see the best.
That's what we keep saying every time we play a game in Australia, in London.
Well, I mean,
all the Aussies still live there.
2013
it needs telling.
double header did. I'm sure there was
60.
I mean that, and I'm sure there was
60.
I mean that, and I remember going on the train and there was a lot of.
Yeah, we were on the tube coming back from that, and there were loads of.
Yeah, so I think
they couldn't believe they could drink through both games. So.
We're going to have to talk about.
Getting knocked at the service.
We're going to have to talk about them in a minute, and we'll talk about them in a minute after a brief from the letters page of League Express, which, I used to read like computer magazines in the 80s, and the editors of those would actively slag off people who made really stupid points in the paper, and that's what Martin Sandler should do. Someone's written a letter saying, instead of the 1895 Cup final, because it didn't make any money or whatever, they should have a curtain raiser game between national conference sides. What? I mean,
on the R-League app.
Why do you even print this rubbish?
On Twitch.
After even print this rubbish.
On Twitch.
After Salford's grand final appearance, Media City woke up to find they had a Super League team on their doorstep. Did they? Now Sonny Bill Williams, due at the AJ Bell Stadium in February, Salford have a chance to bombard Media City. Even rugby union lover Rachel Burden might turn up. Spoiler alert, nah.
Rachel Burden's son played rugby league for Bristol Sonics.
There you go.
John Joe Burden.
This is a good sign. But get Nicky Campbell in. If we say Nicky Campbell,
he's not so much of a fan of him.
If you put his name on Twitter, he searches his own name. Nicky Campbell searches his own name. Do that, listeners.
I'd invite him if I was at the RFL.
This is a good signing, but Brian Noble has form for spending other people's cash and it going pear-shaped. I think Brian Noble will ring up Sonny Bill Williams and say, £2 million here,
I think he said, Mr. Argyle, just sign that cheque. You leave the noughts free. I'll fill it in.
On another point, we need to stop clubs from speaking to other clubs' players until August. But what then will Matthew Shaw report on? That's a letter from Aaron Bauer. Apparently. And speaking of Bauer, Tim says, enjoying the international stuff. Any views on recent Bradford developments before you close? Ex-RFL financial director joining Wood PLC, etc. Aaron Bauer seems to be the only one still asking questions. The problem with asking questions is no one wants to answer them.
Only one asking questions.
Well,
yeah, that's rich.
You and Ross were asking questions for most of the year on your Patreon and in the paper.
Well, Ross has been writing about Bradford, obviously, when he was I think he was threatened with how many bans by Robbie Hunter-Paul and previous.
Mark Green, yeah.
Now you've mentioned his name. He's on the telly every week and no one bats an eyelid.
CEO twice when the club went in administration.
I'm not going to say anything because people don't like it when I say anything. And what I'll say to the person who did contact us last week on Facebook after putting up the video with Richie Mathers, if you're moaning at him getting paid for paying for the club, then there's plenty of other players who were worse. I mean, I didn't see him play for Bradford, but I saw one player at least play for Bradford in their League One season. It was absolutely a disgrace to be a professional, and you can work out who that was.
I'm not sure who he means. No. I'll ask him.
It could be anyone.
Yeah.
Could be anyone. And people who said it's embarrassing that we talk about the Bradford Bulls. It's interesting, isn't it? Because there are plenty of media outlets out there who were happy to laud and praise Andy Chalmers throughout. And
won a cup tie, they were back.
They were back. Both papers said they were back. There were plenty of people lauding.
Can you tell me why Andrew Chalmers was at Parramatta at the Nines in the corporate area, and who was he a guest of? Was at Parramatta at the Nines in the corporate area, and who was he a guest of?
I would imagine.
Because he has no money.
Was that a tournament run by the International Rugby League, and the
Mr.
CEO of that is?
Here's the thing. Do you know why we wanted to? And this is the first. I wasn't going to mention the person on Facebook who sent the message in, but they said, why isn't Phil asked for an inquiry about the salary cap breaches at Wigan and Leeds? Because you know what, they're irrelevant. We're actually talking about an issue here at Bradford. And it could be any club. All the evidence is pointing one way, and everyone knows where it's pointing. And an inquiry would either exonerate those people, or they get the blame.
Rich, it stinks.
It does.
You apply the sniff test, and it stinks. And all the people who are apologising, oh, there's nothing to see here. There's nothing going on.
And again, we go back to £200,000, which is being spent now to the benefit of one club.
If I was a Bradford fan, which the correspondent last week clearly was, I would be wanting us to talk about it. I'd be wanting us to expose what's gone wrong with the club, not this week or last week, but over the last
8 years,
7 years, 8 years, when they first went into administration. And I think you'll find there are some people behind the scenes that are asking the kind of questions that need to be asked. I think you'll find that up front, we've always been open and honest about it. Mark's taken some flack for, he's quite close to what goes on at Bradford, living in the city and having been a fan of the club. I don't think we've ever shied from asking questions. And if I was a fan of the club, that's the very least I would want people to do. So I wouldn't criticise us for doing that. And I don't think that makes us a fan of the club or not a fan of the club. It's all about the integrity of the sport.
Well, it's this whole episode, this Bradford episode in the last 7 years is a microcosm for how badly the sport is run in the UK, and it shows why things aren't going to improve and aren't going to change because the same people keep making the bad decisions, whether they're doing it willfully
because they're not held to account,
or because they're incompetent, but the same sort of things go on and nothing changes.
Well, I think the whole thing about Bradford that needs investigation, I think people will find is being investigated, not by the game but by people outside who are now starting to ask questions, is there's been at least 3, possibly 4 occasions where there's been a choice of ownership, and the mistake that's been made each time has been that it's been the wrong choice of ownership.
It's all been self-interest.
And the ownership that's been selected has been one that has a very close link with Red Hawk on each occasion. And that can't be allowed to go on. And I think it's a shame that the all-party parliamentary group aren't doing a little bit more at the moment. Because I think, again, having a Bradford MP shaking hands with the club going, we just want the club back in Bradford isn't enough.
Well, that's the thing that keeps happening, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's down to the fans. The fans actually need to be the ones
absolutely.
who now say, we're not going to put up with this. We're not going to buy our tickets.
But
we're not going to...
over 1,000 have already bought season tickets. Yeah. Even though the season tickets they bought, they could theoretically take back and say they've been sold under false pretences because at least half of the players we thought were
Destination Super
aren't going to be there anymore. But yeah.
Either they get an ownership stake and have a say in how the club's run, or they boycott the club.
But we also said last week, when you were too busy having a mojito in some bar in Auckland.
The lesson is you don't drink with Trevor Hunt.
Is he good?
He's not human, Trevor.
Right.
Yeah, least finest.
He's got one of those open throats.
Yes. He'll be at the bash. He likes the bash.
But one of the things that we mentioned on here last week was that slight disappointment with Simon Johnson's statement.
Slight?
Because he came in again on a
a
platform of openness, transparency, accountability, integrity.
It's just sound bites, Phil.
And we've had a look and it's fine.
Yeah. Nothing to see here.
£200,000 to mothball a stadium.
Which the other clubs are playing.
In which the previous owner of the club says we're going to build a bespoke stadium, wasn't it? Meaningless marketing.
Could you imagine Todd Greenberg owning half of the Brisbane Broncos or 10%, or Sepp Blatter owning part of Manchester United when he ran FIFA? No, you couldn't.
I still think there's an issue about decisions that have been made to get to the point where you then take over. But I think that if you want to take, none of us are sure if it is 10%. You've got to relinquish the post that you've got within that same sport at the same time. There is a direct conflict of interest.
The other person in ownership runs another club, and the CEO or the chairman is launching another club in Canada. I mean, the whole thing stinks.
But it's only the latest smell, and that's the bit that needs investigating.
The smell has gotten so bad.
You can't distinguish a smell.
And the thing is, it just casts a pall over the whole sport.
But sadly, it doesn't.
No, it does.
Because if this was the sport we want it to be, and why we're so concerned about things like what's happening at Bradford, this would be front page news every other week. This would be David Conn leading a campaign in The Guardian about not what's happening at Bury, but what's happening at Bradford. But because we don't have that resonance anymore, nobody really is writing detailed figures.
That's a separate.
Apart from
it's
Ross.
a connected but separate issue because the care factor isn't there, unfortunately.
So it's in all of our interest that we do expose Bradford, because it would be cleansing for the game if we did, and it would also show that media-wise we have an integrity about ourselves.
I think cleansing is a good word too, because until we cleanse these people who are administrators who keep making these poor decisions, mistakes, whatever you want to call them, for whatever reason, the game's not going to get better, it's not going to improve, it's not going to be going in the direction that we want.
My great hope at the moment is that the 2021 World Cup will be a raging success. And the fact that we've got men's, women's and wheelchair, and we're going to have festivals of World Cup leading it, brilliant. But we know from 2013, when we had that real feel-good factor about that competition,
that was a fantastic tournament.
But we did nothing on the back of it. We wasted every opportunity we had. Not necessarily to... Participation's a really interesting one, because I think if England had won the Rugby Union World Cup, and even though England had won the Cricket World Cup, it's very hard to become a player in those sports without an investment of time and equipment. It's not quite as easy as jumpers for goalposts in football. So I think if we won the World Cup, you wouldn't find every amateur rugby league club inundated.
The world's changed. It's not.
They want to play.
Yeah.
But what you have is you've then got a platform, and a little bit on the back of what happened in 2013, you then get maybe Kevin Sinfield getting nominated for BBC Sport. It's the the intractable things that you can't predict at the time, but suddenly the profile's raised to the point where people say, need to include a rugby league player on that, or we've got these 6 sports stories, we can only put 5 on the news bulletin, but one of them's rugby league. Yeah, but to have a legacy after the next World Cup, you have to have the right people in place, which is why the Bradford story is so important.
The right people. Massive conflict of interest this, Sheena.
That's the very least, I think. Yeah. I agree with that.
I don't know. You know what the problem is? Because I wrote the blurb for the video last week and said, we don't want to talk about Bradford, but we have to talk about Bradford. And we're going to keep talking about Bradford because nothing changes.
You've got to hold people to account. The fourth estate is to hold people to account.
On the board last week, he said the missing piece of the puzzle. Everyone's searching for that missing piece of the puzzle because everyone knows. It was like you mentioned David Conn, his brilliant report on BBC on the ownership of Ellen Road at Leeds United's training ground, and everyone knew that the answer was in the end going to be Ken Bates, and as it turned out, the answer was indeed that it was all owned somehow by cuddly Uncle Ken, but they could never pin it on him. Pin it on him is probably the wrong phrase with the connotations, but.
Allegedly.
So we'll keep asking the questions, be assured.
The problem is, and we keep saying it, it's those MPs, some of which may not be there in a couple of weeks' time, who are willing to jump on the rugby league bandwagon when it suits them, but when they can actually do good, they're not there. Because we want to bring the Bulls back.
They could call for an inquiry.
Can in front of Parliament. They can do that.
Put Nigel Wood, whoever, Ralph Rimmer, Andrew Chalmers in front of a select committee. Very least we can do. Lobby for.
Yeah. We'll do it in a couple of weeks' time when it's all done and dusted. When we've all forgotten.
So are we going to beat PNG?
I think
we being Great England.
Great England. I think they will beat PNG. I mean, PNG beat Fiji on the weekend, which was quite surprising how well Fiji did that. All right, well, just
but it was it was supposed to be one of the international games of the year.
Yeah, that's what I was told. Someone said that on Twitter, but apparently it was sensational.
PNG scored a magnificent try and took them all the way, but I think Fiji just held on because they got the Oceania Shield and promoted. But
that's it. They're in the top.
But the bizarre thing about the Oceania Cup is that Tonga would have got relegated if Australia hadn't been coming over here next year.
Yeah, it's the first year of the Oceania Cup, which the idea of it is great.
Yeah, but when you've got Australia, New Zealand, Tonga, and they've all got two points, it's on points difference, and Tonga would have been relegated.
Well, Australia won it, but they'd lost to Tonga, and they'd only played 2 games. So yeah, like anything, it needs a bit of TLC and persevering. But I think the idea of it is good. But no, I think playing in Port Moresby, it'll be humid, it'll be a tough atmosphere, but I think Great Britain have got enough talent there to get a win. And I think they need to come out with a big performance.
Golden Boot, it's going to be decided this weekend.
Again,
I'm still got money on John Bateman. Oh, what a year he's had for Great Britain in those 2 tests.
Again, why has it been changed? You can't give an international.
It was bought by the International Federation.
Yeah, you can't give out an award when there's 3 games played. Maybe
whose
4.
decision was it to buy it for the International Federation?
How much did they pay?
The thing is, John Bateman would be a willing winner when you combine his club form. He's probably been the best player for Great Britain. I mean, you look at all these stats; they're just freakish. And he was the second row of the year in the NRL.
And the impact he's made in his debut season. Yeah. Very few people.
But you can't give an award for 4 games. I mean, I'm sorry.
No, you can't. That's what they're doing.
It's just. I think it just sort of destroys the history of the award too. When it was the best player in the world, and it had some legitimacy. It had some, But now it's where you played well in 3 games is an award. I mean, you're looking at the candidates. Is it Takeo, Bateman, Tuivasa-Sheck? I'm sure who there's a few. I think Lola Hea's in there, which is a bit odd, but obviously not the Leeds half of the season.
There's 2 the Lola Hea brothers. There's the one that played for Leeds and the one that played for Salford.
There's Tui and there's Tui Mahoa or whatever it is. Yeah. I think John Bateman would actually be, but yeah, again, I don't like the fact that it's changed. And I know you're going to get Bradfield Fitler. I think he's already had another crack, but he was actually someone who won the award previously under the proper. Yeah.
But it was good. I don't know.
And there'll be a women's.
I was going to say I don't know who's on the shortlist week.
Jess Surgis.
I was it won't be an English one.
Yeah.
I think
Emily Rudge.
Oh, you scored 4
I think Brigginshaw.
And Ali Brigginshaw.
Yeah,
So those are the three.
I saw her play at the Nines and then against.
She was magnificent.
Kicking game as a
control.
half.
It's her pace. Everybody played it.
The Silver Ferns against the Gillaroos is turning into be a real brilliant rivalry.
And
the
that's
way they
why
play.
we need the England team to make
Warrington could sign her up. Marquee player in the Women's Super League.
So is there like 50 teams now in the?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many 100-0 scorelines are we going to see?
I don't know.
But again, isn't that an indication? And I know there are people, we talked about this as well, that giving people the opportunity to play at an elite level is an aim at some stage, and the more people that can play, the better. But the way the Aussies, the way the NRL have gone about structuring the women's competition and made it small and concentrated, and now they've got the Gillaroos against the Silver Ferns. We've got a bit of jam. We're going to spread it just a tiny little bit thinner.
Well, it was interesting listening to your episode a couple of weeks ago with Danica and what she was saying that the gap wasn't that, but now it's gone. And that's the thing. If it keeps going, how do you, when the money and the professionalism that's going on in Australia and New Zealand?
Well, we need Sky to top up their men's matches to the requisite number, particularly if they don't get the Dragons games from France with women's matches.
I'm not saying because people will be saying why they're not showing the Featherstone versus League because they're better.
It's Super League, and if you play it as a curtain raiser, you've already got your kit set up, so it's a cost save.
They won't believe that.
Well, so that's it.
I've seen the viewing figures on the channels. Jonathan's coming in.
Yes.
So how sorry for being late.
Your insight for being there, because I think that it does add an extra layer to those of us that just see on a little screen and pass judgment. So Wayne in. Which Wayne?
To find out next week when we look back on an exciting tour. And hopefully...
Final international. Does the season actually end next week?
I think, yeah.
Possibly.
I think we can draw a line under this season next week. And then it'll only be 3 weeks still.
Yeah. And don't forget next...
Boxing Day, yeah, of course. Yeah.
And after next week, after Saturday, or Saturday about midday, Great Britain shirts, half price on the... I'm making that up.
It is a lovely shirt, though.
It is.
Yeah.
I made that up.
But then so will the poppy shirts.
That we had last year. You can still buy them, 25 quid. It's not a year out of date. Well done, Rugby League. That's YouTube done. By YouTube.